Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hello everyone and welcome to your English class. In our lesson today, we will continue with our first unit, which is titled, Did you hurt yourself? Our lesson today is the reading lesson in your books, page 10 and 11. All you need for the lesson today is your books on page 10 and 11, a sheet of paper and a pen to take down your notes. So let's get started. From the conversation lesson yesterday, you had a homework to put yourself in one of the speaker's shoes and narrate or tell what happened. Here, imagine that you were Samir or Jassim. Describe what happened. Both of them had an accident. Describe the situation in there. Which one have you chosen? Here, if you've chosen to be this one, Jassim, my motorcycle skidded on a patch of oil on the road, and I crashed into a car. I was hurled and hit the windshield. I woke up in the hospital. I was scared to death. I broke both legs. Thankfully, there is enough room for all my friends to write their names on the cast. Notice, he described what happened before the accident, and the result, telling how he felt. How about the other one? We're having Samir. I was cycling in the park. I should have worn a helmet. The squirrel came out of nowhere. I swerved, lost my balance, and hit a tree. I got off lightly, only a few bruises and a bump on my head. So he told us about the situation, the setting, what happened, how did it happen, and the result. This is about Samir and Jassim. Okay? For our lesson today, by the end of today's lesson, you will be able to read short stories. You will be able to use some new vocabulary and answer some questions on the reading texts. So it's all about the reading and reading comprehension. It's going to be exciting, so let's get started. Before we read, I want you to open and check your books on page 10 and 11. What is the title for the reading today? It is the big one on the top there, page 10. It is actually Unusual Accidents and Deaths. Sounds like something that is interesting. Accidents and deaths, however, these are not the usual ones that we know about. They are unusual. What are the subtitles in here? We're having underneath that, we will have two subtitles, two groups, unhappy endings and happy endings. Some of them ended tragically, however, the others having happy endings, so they were not tragic. Let's look at the pictures. What pictures do we have? We're actually having a picture for an eagle in here, dropping a turtle. It is a turtle in here. The other picture is for a man. Is he flying? Maybe this one is a bungee jumping or free jumping. We're going to get to know. But before we get into the, let's say, the reading, we are going to look at two of these pictures and try to come up with our own stories. Here I'm having let's describe the picture. We're having an eagle and a little turtle in here. Can you think or imagine what is the story behind that? Let's come up with an accident, something that is related to unusual accidents and deaths. Maybe they are going to tell us about the death of this little turtle, tortoise. Maybe they are going to tell us about how it was caught by the eagle and how it died, or maybe survived. How about the second one in here? We're having two cars. They look like as if they were not normal cars, they are race cars. Two are challenging, competing, and one is going to win. What is the story behind such an accident? It could be a car accident. Maybe someone was trying to cross on the way, and he was hit or she was hit. Or it might be they hit each other, crashed each other. We're going to get to know about the stories behind these pictures. Ready? It's going to be exciting, so let's get started. At the beginning in here, we're having the introduction part. I want you to listen and tell me about what is the reading going to be about. It's going to tell you a brief introduction about what are we going to read about. Let's listen and come up with the answer.
Unusual accidents and deaths. Many people are interested in stories of unusual accidents. Some of these stories have happy endings, but some, unfortunately, have unhappy ones.
So, what is the reading going to be about? It must be going to be about unusual accidents. Some of them are having happy endings, others are having unhappy endings. Maybe they are deaths or tragic endings. So that's why they are divided under two subtitles, happy and unhappy endings. Let's start with the unhappy ones. We will start with the unhappy endings. Here we're having the first story. Listen and tell me about comprehension, the general idea. What is the story about? Who are the characters of the story? What happened by the end? And how did the story happen? Let's listen, and I want you to come up with 1 to 2 sentences about the story.
Unhappy endings. According to the legend, the ancient Greek playwright Aeschylus was killed when an eagle dropped a tortoise on his head. The bird was trying to break the tortoise's shell on a rock in order to eat it. Aeschylus was bald, and the eagle thought the unfortunate man's head was a good rock on which it could break the shell.
So in here, what happened? Who are the characters of our story? We're having an eagle, a tortoise, which is a little turtle, and we're having the famous writer Aeschylus. How can you describe Aeschylus? From the picture, we can tell that he's bald. B-A, bald. It means someone with no hair. He had no hair. So what happened to him? The ancient Greek playwright Aeschylus was killed, so someone killed him, when an eagle dropped a tortoise, a little turtle, on his head. Why? The eagle thought that the bald man's head was a rock on which it could break the shell. So we're having a bald man, and according to the eagle, this is not a head, this is a rock. The eagle was holding a tortoise or a little turtle and wanted to break it so it can eat the turtle inside, to break its shell. So it fell, it dropped it on his head, and he died. So a tragic ending. How about the following story? What happened? Who are the characters and what happened? Let's listen.
An 8-foot-tall ostrich was seen weaving through heavy traffic on a Saudi Arabian highway, near Abha. One of the drivers filmed the scene and uploaded it on the internet. No one tried to stop and catch the 180-kilogram bird that was taller than humans and ran at almost 70 kilometers per hour. It had probably escaped from a farm and ran into heavy traffic instead of the wild.
So, who are the characters of the story? We have no one other than the ostrich. Look at this animal. It's a kind of a huge, big animal. It's a kind of a bird. What happened? The story comes when an ostrich was seen weaving through heavy traffic in Abha. No one tried to stop it because it was very tall and fast. What do we mean by the idea of weaving through? It was running between the cars. We're having traffic, many cars, and it was trying to weave through to avoid the cars. Did anyone stop it? No, no one stopped the ostrich because it is too tall for everyone and very fast for people. They just enjoyed videotape it, and it went viral. Everyone watched the video. How about the following in here? Some people. What happened? Listen and tell what happened to let's say, to the heroes or the characters of our story.
Some people worry about being hit from things falling from outer space. There is only one person in all recorded history who has been killed by a meteorite, Manfredo Setala. The tragedy happened in 1680.
So in here, the story is about someone was hit by a meteorite. What is a meteorite? Look at it. Something that is going to fall out from the sky into people. So it might kill them. However, no one had to worry about this thing. Why? In the recorded history, no one have ever told us about being hit by anything from space, only once, and it was a man was killed by a meteorite in Setla in the 1680. So very old time ago, in the past, in the 1680s. So we don't have to worry to be hit about anything from space. Next, we're having this one, a German soldier. Now we're going to get to the happy endings. We're not going to have any more deaths in here. Happy endings about the German soldier. I want you here to come up with who are the characters of our story and what happened. Let's listen.
Happy endings. A German soldier was riding in the back seat of a World War I plane when the engine stalled as a result of an unusual gust of wind. He fell out of his seat while the plane was high above the ground. As he was falling, the plane's engine started again, and he landed back in his own seat. The pilot was then able to land the plane safely.
Now, the following story in here about Ahmed Ali. You will listen to the story and tell what happened. What is the story about? Let's listen together.
Ahmad Ali lost his 8-year-old son in a drowning accident at a friend's house. His son had been invited to join other children at a friend's house to play and swim in the pool. According to the invitation, a lifeguard was going to be present. The young boy was really excited and begged his father to let him go. So, Ahmad Ali picked him up from school and drove him to his friend's house before 1 p.m. That was the last time he saw him alive.
So what happened in here? We're having Ahmed Ali and his little kid. How old is the kid? He's 8 years old. And what happened? Actually, an 8-year-old boy died after drowning in a swimming pool. It wasn't at Ahmed Ali's house. It was at a friend's house because there were no lifeguard. There was no lifeguard at the pool. Okay, all done with the unhappy endings. Now let's go to the happy ones. Here, we're having a story about a German soldier. What happened? Who are the characters and what happened to these characters? Let's listen.
Happy endings. A German soldier was riding in the back seat of a World War I plane when the engine stalled as a result of an unusual gust of wind. He fell out of his seat while the plane was high above the ground. As he was falling, the plane's engine started again, and he landed back in his own seat. The pilot was then able to land the plane safely.
So what happened in here? It is actually we're having a soldier and he was at the back seat of an airplane, then it stopped. Then he fell out of his seat, then it caught him back again. So a German soldier fell out of his seat while the plane was high above the ground. He was going to be falling. The plane's engine started again and he landed back in his own seat. So he fell, then the airplane caught him back again. Do you think it's believable? It is actually unbelievable, but he was really lucky. How about the following? Bob Hale. What happened to Bob Hale? Let's listen and you will tell.
Bob Hale jumped out of an airplane in November 1972, but his main parachute failed to open. His backup parachute also failed. Bob dropped about 3,000 feet, 900 meters, at 80 miles, 128 kilometers, per hour and hit the ground face first. After a moment, he got up and walked away with only minor injuries. It was an amazing escape.
So what happened to Bob Hale? He was actually jumping out of an airplane, so a parachute is going to catch him. So Bob Hale dropped about 3,000 feet, 900 meters at 128 kilometers per hour, and he hit the ground first, the ground face first. After a moment, he got up, walked away with only minor injuries. So yes, he fell out of the airplane on his face. However, lucky he wasn't injured. He didn't break a bone or anything. Nothing bad happened to him. Only minor injuries, maybe small cuts or bruises. How about the following? Here we're having Phil LaMattina. What happened to Phil LaMattina? Let's listen.
In September 2007, Phil LaMattina escaped death when he was driving at over 300 miles (500 kilometers) per hour in a drag race in Brisbane, Australia. Phil was racing down the track when his car became airborne, split in two, and burst into a fireball. He was knocked out, but he survived. Although he was in the midst of the ball of fire, Phil was burned only on the tip of his finger. When his brothers later showed him the video of the accident, Phil couldn't believe he was watching himself, and that he had such a lucky escape.
What happened to Phil LaMattina, the Australian man? Phil LaMattina was racing down the track when his car became airborne, split in two, and burst into a fireball. So it exploded and it hurled him out of the car. He survived and burned only the tips of his fingers. If you look at the accident, you will say he must have died. However, as a result, all what happened were minor injuries. He burned his fingers, the tips of his fingers. Lucky Phil. How about the following, the last one? We're having Phineas P. Gage. What happened to him? Let's listen.
Railroad worker Phineas P. Gage was working with some dynamite when it exploded unexpectedly. A bar that was 3 feet, 1 meter, long, and that weighed 13 pounds, 6 kilograms, went clear through his head. He remained conscious, but was unable to see out of his left eye. After a while, his sight returned, and he fully recovered.
Okay, so what happened to Phineas Gage? He was actually working with dynamite, which is explosions. Then, suddenly, he was working with some dynamite when it exploded, and the bar went clear through his head, all the way through his head, through his eye, out of his head. However, he fully recovered after a while. At the beginning, he remained conscious and he felt all the pain. He lost the sight on his left eye. However, later on, maybe months later, maybe years, he recovered and he could see with his left eye. Okay. Now let's go to the new vocab, the new words in your books, page 11. Match the words with the meaning. We're having bald. When we were speaking about Aeschylus, we said that he was a bald man. What do we mean when we say bald? Someone is bald means having no hair on the head. Look at this man, he's bald. B-A. Next, to challenge. Look at these men, they are challenging each other. In a race, people challenge. What do? They to contest or fight against, and we only have one winner. Challenge. Next, to weave through. Look at this car, it is weaving through. Just like the ostrich, it was weaving through the cars. It is actually to move through something by turning and avoiding. Not going straight, going right and left, avoiding cars. How about to hurl? Look at this man, he's trying to hurl the stick. Hurl is to throw with a great force. To throw. However, just like the tennis ball or the baseball ball, you are hurling it with strong force, great force. How about burst? It was burst. It means to explode, explosion. How about to recover? The recovery idea It means like someone to get better. He couldn't see, then he recovered. He went back to the first situation or the previous situation. This is the idea of recovery. Now, in your book's page 11, we're having the after reading exercise. Complete these sentences about the reading. Here we're having the eagle dropped the tortoise, the little turtle, on Aeschylus' head. And so, what happened? As a result, it was dropped. Then, what happened to Aeschylus? And so, Aeschylus was killed. As a result of dropping, he was killed. The ostrich in the traffic had probably escaped. Where do usually we're having ostriches stay or live? From maybe a farm or from the zoo. Ahmed Ali agreed to take his son to a friend's house. Why? He said, yes, it's okay, you can go. Because he thought many children were invited, it's not only his son, and a lifeguard was going to be present. However, the story stated that they didn't have a lifeguard because the kid was there very early, before the invitation time. Although Bob Hale had a backup parachute, there were 2 parachutes. However, it didn't open. So we're having 2 parachutes. The main parachute didn't open, as well as the backup parachute. He fell on his face, however, only minor injuries. When Phil saw the pictures of himself on the video, which was the race car, what did he say? Did he believe? No. He couldn't believe that he was watching himself because it was a lucky escape. He only burned his fingertips. So it was a lucky escape. Now, which story? Can you tell which story is the oldest amongst these? It is actually Aeschylus and the eagle, something that is the oldest story. Which story? We're having an animal involved. We're having an animal. We're having Aeschylus' story and the ostrich in Abha as well. Someone survived an explosion. Something exploded and someone survived. Phineas P. Gage, which is the dynamite. He survived. He didn't die. Which story occurs in a drag race, car racing? Whose story? Phil LaMattina. Which story took place on air? It happened not on land, on air. It was actually the German soldier and also Bob Hale, the German soldier who fell out of the airplane, and the other one, Bob Hale, who fell on the ground face. Which one is a drowning accident? We're having water and someone who was drowned under the water. It was actually the tragic story of Ahmed Ali's son. Ahmed Ali's son, his death. Okay, how about in the discussion part? Which incidents in the article do you think is the strangest? What do you think when you will say, I can't believe this story? It is very strange. I believe maybe it is the story with the German soldier who fell out of the airplane, then he was caught by the airplane. I believe he might be dreaming. Which one is the most interesting for you? You feel this is an interesting story. Maybe it is the story which is Phineas Gage, who had an explosion, however he survived. I believe it's an interesting. Any story of these that you believe it's interesting. Where do ostriches normally live? Usually in farms, and they are actually in Africa. Why do you think these ostrich escape? Why did it escape? Maybe the zoologist people in the zoo were not taking good care of it. The doors were open. It was an easy escape for it. How did people react to the scene in the ostrich story? Actually, people enjoyed it. They took out their phones and videotaped it, and they sent it to everyone. Do you know anyone who avoided a bad accident? Do you know anyone who survived a bad, whether a car accident or any other accident? Can you remember any of them? Everyone is having a story for someone who survived a very bad accident. Just remember it and tell us about what happened in this or that story. For your homework, I want you to choose one of the stories and to write a report on it. So put yourself in that place and try to write a report about it. What happened? When did it happen? And who was involved? Try as if you were supervising or as if you were looking at it, and tell maybe your colleagues or your siblings about it. A very short report about what happened in that story that is of your choice. Okay? I guess that is it for the lesson today, and thank you so much for your time.